Have you ever heard a story 1,000 times and just assumed every detail was set in stone? Well, today we're looking at one of the most famous stories of all time, and we're going to zero in on one detail that some argue has been miscalculated for centuries. It's a question about simple math that, well, turns out it might not be so simple after all.
Okay, so let's just lay it all out there. This is the heart of the whole thing. On one hand, you have the story most of us know by heart: crucifixion on Good Friday, resurrection on Sunday morning. But if you actually count the hours, you get about 36 hours. But then you look at the prophecy Jesus himself gave, super specific, 3 days and 3 nights. That's 72 hours, give or take. So right off the bat, we've got a major problem. The traditional story only gets us halfway there.
And this isn't just about splitting hairs. According to a lot of researchers, this is the central mystery of Passion Week. So let's treat this like a detective story. We're going to look at the clues, examine the evidence from the source material, and see if we can piece together this 3-day contradiction.
Now, our first and biggest piece of evidence is this prophecy right here. And according to the texts, this wasn't some off-the-cuff remark. It was presented as the only sign he would give. They call it the sign of Jonah. This was supposed to be the ultimate proof of his claims. So you'd think that getting this one exactly right would be, well, absolutely crucial.
And when you look at it like this, visually, it really hits you. That first bar, that's the 72-hour requirement set by the prophecy. And the second bar, that's where the traditional timeline gets us, only 36 hours. It's literally half. For those who argue for a different timeline, this gap is the smoking gun. It's just too big to ignore.
All right, so to crack this case, we have to break down the clues. And clue number 1 is the prophecy itself. We have to ask, what exactly did 3 days and 3 nights mean back then?
People who have dug into this argue that there's no wiggle room here for poetic language. They point out that in the Bible, a day is when it's light out, and a night is when it's dark. Simple as that. They are two separate, literal things. So to fulfill the sign of Jonah, you couldn't just have parts of them. You needed 3 full periods of light and 3 full periods of dark.
So when you apply that strict, literal test to the Friday timeline, it just doesn't add up. Think about it. A crucifixion late Friday afternoon gets you Friday night and Saturday night. That's only 2 nights. And it only gives you 1 full day, which is Saturday. It totally fails to meet that very specific requirement of 3 days and 3 nights.
Okay, now for our next clue. And honestly, this is where the theory gets really fascinating. It's a subtle detail hidden in the story of the women preparing burial spices. Some people have nicknamed it the Sabbath sandwich.
But before we get to the clue, you have to understand something crucial about Jewish life back then. There wasn't just one kind of Sabbath. Of course, you had the regular weekly Sabbath, every Saturday. But you also had these special high Sabbaths, or high days, which were tied to big religious festivals. These were major days of rest, and they could fall on any day of the week. And what's interesting is, the Gospel of John specifically calls the day after the crucifixion a high day.
So here's the puzzle that creates. In the Gospel of Mark, it says the women bought the burial spices after the Sabbath was over. But in Luke, it says they prepared the spices and then they rested on the Sabbath. So wait a minute, how could they buy the spices after a Sabbath but prepare them before that exact same Sabbath? It sounds like a flat-out contradiction.
And the solution proposed by this theory is brilliant. The only way both of those statements can be true at the same time is if there wasn't 1 Sabbath, but 2. With a regular, normal workday sandwiched right in between them.
Okay, so let's take stock. We've got 2 huge clues: the need for a full 72 hours in the tomb, and this whole puzzle about 2 different Sabbaths. With those pieces in hand, we can actually try to reconstruct a timeline that makes everything fit together perfectly.
And here it is. This is how it could work. The crucifixion happens on a Wednesday, with the burial before sunset. That night is night 1. Thursday is a high Sabbath, rest day number 1. That solves part of the puzzle. Then Friday is a normal workday. That's when the women could go out and buy and prepare the spices. Then Saturday is the regular weekly Sabbath, rest day number 2. By the time the tomb is found empty early Sunday morning, you've had 3 full nights, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and 3 full days, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. It all fits.
So when you put the 2 theories head-to-head, the contrast is pretty stark, isn't it? When it comes to the 3 days and 3 nights prophecy, the Friday theory fails, but the Wednesday theory passes with flying colors. With the spice puzzle and the 2 Sabbaths, the Friday theory creates a contradiction, while the Wednesday theory makes both accounts work together perfectly. For people who support this idea, the case seems pretty strong.
So at this point, you might be wondering, okay,
Wednesday, Friday, does it really make a difference?
Well, for the people who advocate for this alternate timeline, the answer is a huge yes. This is way more than just a debate about a date on a calendar.
They say it's significant for a few big reasons. First, it means the sign of Jonah, the one great proof offered, was fulfilled literally down to the hour. It also lines up with other ancient prophecies, like one in the book of Daniel about the Messiah being cut off in the midst of the week. Wednesday is, of course, the middle of the week. Plus, it just makes all four Gospels agree, with no contradictions. They see it as a sign of divine precision, not just barely fulfilling a promise, but doing it in a way that's above and beyond.
So, if the evidence is so compelling, why is the Friday tradition the one we all know? Well, the sources we're looking at point to a major historical shift. Back in 325 AD, the Roman Emperor Constantine pretty explicitly wanted to separate the growing Christian church from its Jewish origins. This quote from the Council of Nicaea is pretty blunt. The argument is that this push to create a new, separate identity led to abandoning the old calculations and cementing the Friday to Sunday tradition we have today.
So what's the takeaway here? Does all this evidence point to a corrected timeline, a critical piece of history that's been overlooked for centuries? Or is it a fringe theory that's just reading way too much into the details? The evidence definitely raises some powerful questions, and for now, the debate continues.